What's the most embarrassingly awkward situation you ever encountered while staying at a friend's house as a kid? 3 AM. My friend and I stopped playing Halo for a bit and go to get some water cause we were thirsty. Walk into the kitchen to see his dad's girlfriend giving his dad head in the middle of the room. We stayed thirsty all night. Everyone stayed thirsty, except dad's girlfriend. Walked into the toilet in the middle of the night to find his mum shaving her butthole with an electric razor. She was standing by the toilet with one foot up on the edge of the sink, one hand peeling her cheeks apart and the other holding the buzzing instrument which was making laps of her ring piece. I stood for what felt like an eternity, but it couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 seconds simply staring at this, trying to comprehend what was happening. Her blue eyes and brown eye locked with my eyes and we both held our breath, the hum of the razor chewing her butt hairs the only sound bouncing off the bathroom walls. A sickening concert, heralding the onset of potential repressed memories. She said my name really quietly, half a gasp. She flicked the switch off yet held her flamingo stance. I said and ran back to my sleeping bag, pulled it over my head and tried to go to sleep. In the morning she never left her room, said she was ill, never was allowed to stay at his place again. My friend's sister had a birthday party and I was invited. We were 16. We got really drunk. My friend for the first time, where I live it is legal to get drunk at 16. And when we went home I slept in his bed. My friend's bed is really high up, like +2 meters, and I puked in the middle of the night on him. He slept on the floor, resulting in splashing all over his room. I spent the rest of the night cleaning his room. The next day I got invited for lunch and they made special food for his sister's birthday and I could not make eye contact with anyone. So embarrassing. He is still one of my best friends and his room smelled for another 6 months because of my vomiting. Always have a good laugh when we think about this story. At least you can laugh at this rather than being embarrassed about it. 5th grade. Started hanging out with a kid I never really did before and he had a sleepover with our mutual friends for his birthday. Everything was great. Played N64 all night in his basement and his mom was cooking all sorts of food and being generally awesome. Gets late, we all start falling asleep in the basement. Then dad gets home drunk as all heck. His parents proceeded to scream and beat the crap out of each other all while we were in the basement witnessing the entire ordeal upstairs. After about 10 minutes we hear his older sister enter the scuffle trying to stop it and get them to calm down and stop. Dad hits the sister. Mom pulls a knife out and starts threatening dad. Sister runs away. Dad throws a lamp and promptly exits the house with various name calling and swearing. All quiet upstairs except for his mom crying. We hear her on the phone and shortly after a cop shows up to file a report, I assume, and an aunt shows up to console mom. We all kind of fall asleep wondering what the frick happened. Next morning we go upstairs and see some damage, but the mess is cleaned up. We try engaging with his mom and she seems okay, just worn down. We offer to take some trash bags outside for her and see some ripped up presents in the garbage can outside. That night his dad took off and filed for divorce not long after, and his sister didn't come home for a few days, until they were pretty positive he wouldn't be back. TLDR. Went to my friend's birthday party and ended up with his parents' divorce and sister running away. That's rough. I've only had an experience like that once, but it was recent, and with my ex's sister and her husband. It was just bad. It wasn't as bad as your story though, but I felt so uncomfortable. I was at my friend's house and his parents told him that after I left he had to take a bath. He started throwing a fit, crying and screaming, I refuse, and I just stood there on the steps not knowing what to do. His parents remained calm through the fit, but I couldn't take it anymore and kinda slinked out the back door. He was an interesting kid. I was at my friend's house, age 11. Anytime I wasn't in school or at home I was there, so his family was used to me being around. This time a little too much. We were in the kitchen making food when his dad strolls in after a shower, expecting only his son to be there, and flashes him while letting rip. I'll never forget it. The horror. Amazed that nobody wants to comment on this. I was about 12 and sleeping over at a friend's house. There was an argument between him and his brother and they started fighting. Now, I'm lying on the bottom bunk pretending to be asleep when their mother storms in and heads straight to the top bunk, where the fight is happening. At this point I open my eyes to realize that the mother is wearing nothing but a very large t-shirt that goes down to just below the hip. The mother reaches the bunk beds and proceeds to reach out to restrain the brothers. In doing so, the large t-shirt comes up to reveal what can only be described as a hairy beast. She had no underwear on whatsoever. I look at it for about 8 seconds before the t-shirt covers it again after she's done telling off the brothers. I lie there in shock before exclaiming to my friend, "I've just seen your mum's fanny." He laughed his head off. TLDR sleeping at friends. Brothers get into a fight above me on bunk bed. Their mother comes in wearing just a t-shirt, lifts her arms up to reach the top bunk. I get an eye full of waffle when he pulled out a machete from under the bed at 3 AM and said he used it to cut lizards' heads off. In the morning, I walked in on his little brother not masturbating but just playing with his junk in the middle of the living room. I noped the frick out and never went back. Was staying at friend's house in the country for the weekend in 5th grade. They had a lot of animals, including 2 adorable lab puppies. Unfortunately, none of their animals were treated and one of the puppies got distemper and died. I guess it happened quite quickly, I don't know. We were outside and my friend's dad and brother were looking at the other puppy, which was being extremely playful. They said it was a sign of distemper. Then they beat the puppy to death with a hammer. No one was happy about this, nor did anyone seem to mind that they were surrounded by kids. I don't know jack crap about distemper. This is the first time I've thought about it in over a decade for sure, so I can't really remember how my 11-year-old brain processed that. I remember my friend, a girl, was crying but I wasn't. I was comforting her for some reason, saying, "Don't worry, it'll be okay, weird." Well, glad I got that off my chest. TL. Doctor, my friend's dad beat a puppy to death with a hammer because it had distemper. That's not a sign of distemper. It would be the opposite. They would be lethargic, vomiting, and just other stuff. That puppy was okay. What he did was extremely cruel. Back when I was in middle school, my friends and I used to play airsoft, and we took it seriously. We had expensive guns, armor, the whole nine. Anyway, we used to play back in the woods behind our neighborhood, in the middle of which there was a field. So, we're playing, and I'm on the edge of the field. Along the edge of said field, there are piles of mulch that had to be at least 9 feet high. We used them for cover. Well, I saw my friends on the opposing team approaching, so I ran as fast as I could, and jumped next to one of the mulch piles. Except, I fell in. As I roll back out, I can feel the barrage of airsoft bullets hitting me. I'm out. I'm out. Jesus, stop shooting, I begged. We never started, they replied. This is when I look down to see that I am covered in fire ants. I couldn't even see the color of my shirt. Panicking, I start trying to rip off my clothes, but I remember that I'm wearing armor which someone else has to help me remove. So, I endure the pain as my friends run across the field to me, and eventually remove the armor. As soon as they do, I strip naked as I begin running back through the woods and onto the main street of my neighborhood, down a few blocks, and straight into the living room of the friend whose house I was at, which is when I made deer in the headlights eye contact with his 2 parents who are on the couch. Pausing only for a moment, I run out their back door, and jump into the pool. Ah, relief. I wanna know what the parents were thinking during all this. They just see their son's friend running naked and then jump in the pool. Sleepover. Woke up to weird noises. Looked to my left to see my bud banging his girlfriend. Right there, in the same room. Sleepover. And you didn't join the threesome as they wanted, dude. My friend's 10th birthday. We had 6 friends over and we stayed up watching the first South Park movie. The birthday boy, Nolan, got a motor scooter as his big present. The next morning we woke up to small turds in obscure places on the floor, which we assumed was the fault of Nolan's dog. Nope, we would soon learn this was far worse. Fast forward, we are all taking turns on the scooter. Before it was my turn, my friend Curtis hopped on. As he pulled up and handed me the scooter, I noticed something peculiar. Brown stuff on the seat. We then asked Curtis what the frick it was and immediately regretted it. Curtis crapped his pants. Didn't change his clothes. Rode the scooter with his crap stained pants. I'm 20 years old and I will never forget that story. Most awkward birthday party of my life. I had a friend I guess when I was around 10. Let's call him Jack. He invited me over to a sleepover at his house. We were going to watch Ghostbusters 2 which had just come out on VHS at Blockbuster. Anyways, I get there and I am surprised to see this other kid from my school there. He was about our age. Let's call him Jim. I remember going downstairs sometime after the movie started to get something to drink. When I came back upstairs and opened the door I was shocked. Jack and Jim were on the bed. Jack was on his back and Jim was on top of him. I could see the baby erectongs basically banging into each other. I was like WTF. My 10-year-old brain couldn't comprehend what was going on. Jack acted like it was no big deal and called it sword fighting and wanted to know if I wanted to join in. I just said nothing and proceeded to rewatch the movie. I never really talked to Jack again. TL Doctor saw two baby dong sword fighting and lost a friend. Was sleeping on the floor. While there, I had a pretty good view under the bed, and I came face to face with some seriously skidded up underpants. I wasn't impressed. I would regularly go to my buddy's house and his dad kept a sign on his bedroom door that read, "If you hear us a rockin', don't come a knockin'." My aunt had a sign on her door that read "The Orgy Room." I got up to pee in the middle of the night. My friend's dog knocked me over, held me down, and started humping me. I was maybe 8. Very small and thin. I couldn't fight the dog off. Thank God I was wearing pants and not a gown. I basically had to lay there until he was done. I still don't like big dogs to this day. That's. Walked into a devoutly Christian household to see my friend's younger brother peg a Bible at his father, knock over a vase, moon his mother and run out. Got to the word peg and thought this would go in a whole different direction. When I was in grade school I had a friend I used to play with that lived around the corner from my house. He had a tree house, and a Sega Genesis, and a Game Boy Color, and a Super Nintendo, a bazillion games and movies. I had none of those things so I hung out with him a lot. A few months after we started hanging out, I had a sleepover with him. He went to the bathroom and a few minutes later I heard him shout, "Mom, I'm ready." His mom yelled to his dad, Bob, or whatever his name was, "It's your turn." Turns out his parents wiped his butt for him. Literally, we were probably 8 or 9. He had no physical or cognitive handicaps. His parents were his physical and cognitive handicaps. When I was pretty young, say 6 or 7, I was staying over at one of my good friends' houses. I stayed there a lot, so her parents knew that I would sometimes sleepwalk. What they did not expect was for me to sleepwalk to their kitchen, put an apple in the toaster, pull down my pajamas, and pee on the kitchen floor, right in front of both of my friends' parents. Apparently I thought I was in a bathroom. These same parents still bring this incident up at dinner parties. There's no living down the shame of the great sleep pee. One of the kids that was there crap himself. His parents showed up shortly after and started yelling at him in front of everybody. That kid was me. I slept walk as a kid and them parents didn't really bother to tell me or inform me really. They'd mention it, but I never remember doing any of the things they mentioned, so as a kid I just shrugged it off. Slept over once and crashed on the couch. Apparently I got up in the middle of the night just kinda loudly asking for water. Repeatedly just yelling for some water because I was thirsty. The kitchen was like directly to my left. Someone woke up and appeased me with a glass of water. Woke up with no knowledge of this. Everyone acted oddly with me in the morning, while I still had no idea. It wasn't cleared up until like a week later. They must have thought I was crazy. Early teenager, but I was invited to a friend of a friend's house. Rich looking place. About 15 minutes and we go in the backyard swimming pool. I slam a beach ball right into his mom's face enough to send her head back. Later we had dinner and I slept over like nothing happened. Cool people. Well, it was an accident. Well, this wasn't embarrassing on their part. It was all me. I was staying over my friend's house as her grandmother had just passed away suddenly. This was when I was 14, so our standard response at the time was "your mum." It was the ultimate answer for any question, so it became a kind of reflex. By now I am sure you know where this is going. Yep. So my friend's mum comes in the room, eyes red from crying, and asks, "What are you girls doing?" with a smile on her face. Without missing a beat I respond with, "We're doing your moo," and just trailed off. I looked at the shocked and horrified expression on my friend's face and knew there was no recovery to be made and simply said, "I am very sorry, Mrs. Surname. That was really rude and insensitive, but it was too late." She burst into tears, insisted that it was fine and then left the room. I still feel really awful. Seriously, she had passed away that morning. And that, kids, is why we communicate with people properly. I used to sleep under his bed, don't ask. One morning, I woke up, but for whatever reason, I thought I was in the bathroom and I just peed right there. I blamed the dog and asked for a pair of his underwear because I spilled water on myself. He knew. Sorry, I have to ask why. Being exposed to my best friend's abusive father. This guy was a piece of work. I remember cowering in misery at the dinner table and saying I wanted to go home. I also realized how awful it was that my friend was stuck in this environment 24/7, whereas I could escape fairly quickly. Ugh. But for the grace of God go I. Friend of mine always bragged about the size of his dong. Said that it ran in his family. Anyway, he invites me and a few other friends over to watch movies and spend the night. In the middle of the night his dad gets up to pee with no clothes on. His dong was swinging between his legs at least 10-12 inches. He had to step over us to get through. We all tried to pretend to sleep, but started giggling and laughing. Never doubted my buddy again. What the frick kind of crap is this? Mine was at a sleepover. When I was about 8, I was dreaming about how badly I had to pee. In my dream, I sat on the toilet and with a sigh of relief, peed. I woke up from the dream, in the middle of peeing myself. I was sleeping on the floor, in a now sopping wet comforter. That's happened to me before. Since then, I always check that I'm not sleeping before I start to pee. 13-year-old me was at a friend's house for a sleepover. We were sleeping in the entertainment room, which was right next to his parents' bedroom. We then hear a rhythm of soft thuds. The pace begins to pick up. I wasn't too sure what it was at first, but then another kid leans over to my friend and asks, "Are your parents freaking?" My friend stayed quiet. I could tell that with every thud his childhood was being chiseled away. The morning after a sleepover, the girl's mom went inside this little shop to grab donuts and we all waited in the car. While we waited, we started being snoopy and going through the glove box. We found many pictures of her mom eating cake off of her dad's dong. Those pictures were never spoken of again. In first grade, my best friend Will and I used to roll up in blankets and caterpillar around his house. We called this taco time. One day we tacoed right into his parents' room. His parents were doing it doggy on the bed, and we were all curled up in blankets watching. They noticed, screamed, and we tacoed out of there as fast as we could. I laughed so hard at taco time lol. My best friend's mom was an alcoholic and his dad was a pilot, so he was frequently gone. His mother was beautiful, but when she drank she was a horrible person. One night when we were about 12, we were sitting on the floor playing a board game and his mother came in the room drunk and naked. I felt bad for my friend. We just kept our eyes glued to the game, not daring to look up. She was yelling about him for something but he just answered her without looking at her. Then she went and sat in a chair next to us and fell asleep. Then I said something like, "I have some new baseball cards. Do you want to go see them?" So we ran over to my house and I whispered to my mother, "Mrs. Jones is drunk. Can Bobby sleep here?" We had 6 kids in a small house but my mother made room for us to sleep in the den. The sad thing is they moved, but I caught up with him years later and invited him to my wedding. He came and got drunk. When I was like 13, my friend's little 9-year-old brother chased his handicapped 6-year-old brother around with their mom's douchebag yelling, "Mom puts this in her pee." Just then, my friend's mom, who I had never met, happens to come home to catch them doing this and the older one told her that I found the douchebag and told him to do it. I just left. I sneaked out with my friend so to scout about the neighborhood at night, came back, and found his mom's boyfriend passed out drunk on the couch with his pants down and his hand on his junk. I once found my brother asleep on the sofa, trousers down, dong in hand. Sounds like the classic post-masturbatory nap. Me and one other guy were at a friend's house, went to watch a music video on his computer, not on the internet, and well, our 10-year-old selves didn't see it coming. Girl getting fricked. close up of her tea, etc. We ran away from the screen. One of my friends was convinced he had ejaculated. I guess you could say your friend didn't see it coming. Went with my friend and his mom to her brother's house. Early 80s, and they sat the kids in the living room and they had an illegal copy of heavy metal playing for us. I was probably 10. Heard quiet then laughing from the adults' room. The talk about bulls and ounces. Then friend's mom came in and quickly said let's go. Kinda figured years later they were doing coke and then started fighting about a deal gone bad. I had a sleepover at my house with this one girl. I was 10, she was 12. We were both big fans of Harry Potter, and we talked about it before going to bed. She kept going on about how hot she found Harry, which I thought was weird since I wasn't yet at the age where I thought about these things. Anyway, we went to bed. I was always pretty flighty. It took me a good hour to make myself fall asleep, but the other girl fell asleep quickly. Then, she started talking in her sleep. I had never known anyone who talked in their sleep before. Took me years to find out I did it, so I thought this was some sort of game. I recall she was saying something about loving Harry, so I started talking back to her, whispering in her ear that I was Harry while giggling. She freaking launches at me, supposedly in her sleep, and starts touching me in awkward places while muttering how much she loves Harry. I shoved her off. No easy task. She was rather large and I was a skinny goblin of a kid, and jumped up from the floor we were sleeping onto my bed, curled up by the wall and freaked out. She started crying and begging Harry to come back. I just sat there and stared out the window, trying to ignore it until I fell asleep on my bed. The next morning she seemed perfectly cheerful and normal. I chose not to bring it up, ever, at all. I still don't know if she was actually asleep, it just took a joke too far, or genuinely was trying to get me. TLDR. Was partially physically shamed by a supposedly sleeping friend who thought I was Harry Potter. Had a friend years ago who showed me his pee stash. As a young teen who had never seen tentacle hentai pee before, I was creeped out and left as soon as I could. I caused a hilariously awkward situation because I thought it was funny. I was visiting my, later I learned highly religious, new friend's house for the first time. His parents made steak for dinner, and as we sit down at the table, I grab the steak knife, hold it up, and with a 100-yard stare quietly say, I haven't been allowed to hold knives since the incident. The room was silent, and I continued to stare at it for a good 20 seconds before I began laughing my butt off. Later I was told I seriously freaked out his family and my friend was mortified, but they were able to look back on it and laugh. I was probably like 12 at the time. Does 17 qualify as being a kid? I'll tell my story anyway. I was at my girlfriend's house and we were getting down and dirty. We were home alone, but her dad was right downstairs the whole time. She was making noises that were definitely audible from downstairs. We finished up and went downstairs, and her dad was sitting right there on a sofa. Hey Chris, how are you? He said. I had no idea what to say. I awkwardly said hi to him. He asked me to join them for dinner. The entire dinner I was expecting him to leap across the table and kick my butt. He didn't. He seemed relatively jolly the entire time. For me and my girlfriend, it was the most awkward dinner we've ever had. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.